My name is Samuel Baru. I am 65 years old, and for more than 4 decades of my life, I was a rabbi, a dedicated scholar, someone who always sought truth within the tradition I was taught. I always try to be faithful to the law, faithful to what I learned, faithful to the scriptures. I was always very rational, perhaps too rational. And I say this because I never imagined that one day I would be here telling something that would change everything I thought about God, about the Messiah, about life and death, that it all began on an ordinary morning. I wasn't feeling sick, just tired. My wife had been warning me for weeks to slow down, but I repeated that typical phrase of a stubborn man, "I'm fine, I just need to rest a little." Little did I know that phrase would be the last I would speak in my house as the man I was before I sat down to review some ancient texts. It was something I did almost automatically, but while reading, I felt a pressure in my chest, as if an invisible hand was squeezing my heart from the inside. It wasn't strong pain, but a sensation that something serious was happening. I tried to stand up to get some air, and the world around me seemed to spin. The last thing I remember in physicality was me saying, "I think I need to sit down." And then everything became silent. Not the silence of fainting, not the emptiness of unconsciousness, but a living, conscious silence, the kind of silence that has presence. When I realized it, I was no longer trapped in my body. I was above it. I saw myself lying on the living room floor. I saw my wife desperate, screaming my name, trying to shake me. I saw everything, the environment, the movement, the distress, and at the same time, I felt a peace I had never felt before. No pain, no fear, no confusion. It was as if I had freed myself from a weight I didn't even know I was carrying, that I was in this state that I noticed something entering the environment. It wasn't light coming through the window. It wasn't shadow. It wasn't a human figure. It was a presence that filled everything, that made the air seem more alive, that made my spirit tremble and rest at the same time. The light changed. It wasn't the physical light of the room. It was a light that seemed to have its own intelligence, a light that observed me. And before any form was revealed, I already knew who was coming. I don't know how to explain how I knew. It was as if my soul, not my mind, recognized. When I finally looked, he was there, Jesus, the name I had spent my entire life avoiding, debating, rejecting, explaining, discussing, deconstructing. But in that instant, there was no space for denial, for argumentation, for theology, only recognition. He was as real as any person I had ever seen, but real in truth. And at the same time, he didn't seem limited like we are. His presence went through everything, filled everything, and yet was gentle that I wanted to speak, but emotion took my entire being. He looked at me like someone who had always known me, like someone who saw every prayer I made, every doubt I hid, every moment I sought God without knowing I was seeking him. And then he spoke my name, Samuel. The sound of that word changed everything. There is no way to explain what I felt. It was a mixture of love, authority, truth, peace, and belonging. As if he had waited my entire life to say my name that way, that I cried. I cried like a child. I cried like I never cried in the most intense moments of my ministry. And he came closer, placed his hand on my shoulder, and in that touch, I felt life. I felt something I had never felt when touching a sacred book or teaching a class or performing a ritual. It was God touching me. Not an idea of God, not a concept, but life itself. And then he said, "I am the one you have always sought, even when you didn't know it." And that dismantled me because it was true. Every study, every hidden doubt, every secret questioning, everything now made sense. He looked at me with tenderness and said, "Samuel, come. I have something to show you." And in an instant, we left that place. I can't explain if we flew, if we crossed through, if we simply changed dimensions. I just noticed that we were in an environment that I cannot describe with human words. There were no walls, but there were limits. There was no floor as I know it, but my feet touched something firm. The environment breathed, everything seemed alive. And there Jesus showed me something about time, something that would move my soul forever. Jesus walked with me in that place that didn't seem to belong to time. I looked at him and couldn't understand how something so holy could be so simple. There was no exaggeration, no theatricality. His authority was silent, but stronger than any human power I've ever seen. And at the same time, his love was so deep it seemed to fill everything as we walked, a kind of horizon opened before us. It wasn't sky, it wasn't earth. It looked like a living curtain, as if time itself was being folded. And Jesus said to me, "What I'm going to show you is not to scare you, but to prepare you." He raised his hand and the curtain opened. Before me, I saw scenes passing as if they were windows. It wasn't imagination, it wasn't metaphor. I saw as if I were there. First, I saw the world as it is now, rushed, confused. People seeking everything except God. Separated families. A generation lost in an ocean of opinions. Young people without direction. Spiritual leaders worried about popularity instead of truth. I felt the weight of this, and Jesus looked at me as if confirming, the world forgot the truth because it stopped looking for it in me. When he said this, I felt a profound pain. I felt the pain he feels, not anger, not judgment, but sadness for seeing his children walking away from the light. Then the vision changed. The world seemed to enter a period of chaos. I saw nations in conflict, but at the same time, a global movement calling for unity, peace at any cost. And Jesus explained, the end times don't begin with war. They begin with a cry for peace. People desperately looked for someone who would offer quick solutions. And that's when I saw the figure forming. It was a charismatic man, intelligent, extremely convincing. He spoke with a calm that brought immediate confidence. He promised to solve economic problems, conflicts, inequality, and people admired him. But something about him gave me chills. He was too brilliant, too nice, too perfect. It was like a false light. Jesus said firmly, "This is the Antichrist." My heart froze immediately. I kept looking at that figure, and it seemed that the more people applauded him, the darker the environment became, but no one noticed. It was as if everyone was hypnotized. Jesus continued, "He will come as a savior before revealing who he really is." I saw religious leaders applauding the man. I saw people of all beliefs coming together in a great worldwide celebration. And in the midst of all this, I noticed something that made me shudder. Many who claimed to know God were supporting the false leader without even realizing it. And Jesus said, "The deception will be so great that even those who consider themselves wise will stumble." The scenes accelerated. I saw economic crises growing, a global collapse that left everyone desperate. And then that leader appeared with the perfect solution, a digital system that promised security, resource control, stability. He said no one would go hungry anymore, that everything would be fair, that everyone would have access to the same opportunities. But Jesus spoke softly with profound sadness. The solution that seems like freedom will be the greatest prison in history. The system was accepted. I saw people happy, celebrating, thinking that there was finally justice in the world. But behind it, I saw invisible chains, control, manipulation, total dependence. And whoever didn't accept it couldn't buy, couldn't sell, couldn't work. I saw persecution. I saw people being humiliated for maintaining their faith. And Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder again. "Samuel, faithfulness will be tested, but I will always be with mine." Then I saw something even stronger, a moment when that leader finally revealed his nature. He no longer hid the darkness. His gaze transformed. The false light disappeared and revealed what was really there. I felt fear, but Jesus came closer and said, "Do not fear. Darkness only grows as far as the light allows." And when he said this, the vision changed completely. I saw a powerful movement of true faith, simple, fragile people, but full of the Spirit. I saw an awakening among young people, families, the elderly. I saw people finding Jesus, not through religion, but through profound truth. People who were previously lost became strong. And Jesus said, "In the darkest days, my light will shine even brighter." I began to cry. It was so many feelings that my spirit seemed unable to bear it. Jesus embraced me. Yes, he embraced me. And in that embrace, I felt absolute peace, that peace that doesn't exist on this earth. He then looked into my eyes and said, "I'm going to send you back. What you saw needs to be told." I felt a mixture of joy and fear. I didn't want to go back. Being there was too perfect. But he repeated, "There is still purpose for you." And before I could respond, I felt as if I was being pulled back, as if the spiritual world was closing. Suddenly, I was in my body, and air entered my lungs with the force of thunder. When I opened my eyes, the sound of my wife crying was the first thing I heard. It was a desperate cry, one that comes from the depths of the soul. And everything seemed confusing. The ambulance lights, blurred faces, people talking loudly. I tried to move, but my body felt heavy, as if I was returning from a very distant place. One of the paramedics looked at me with wide eyes, as if he had witnessed a miracle. He placed his hand on my chest and said, "He's back. He's back." My wife fell on me, crying and laughing at the same time, calling my name as if she wanted to make sure it was real. I wanted to speak to calm her, but the first thing I tried to say didn't come out as I expected. My voice seemed afraid to return to the world, and in that moment I was fully aware that something in me had been irreversibly transformed. As they placed me on the stretcher and took me inside the ambulance, I still felt his presence inside me, as if the light I saw there continued attached to my being. It was so strong that I couldn't concentrate on the paramedics' questions. They asked my name, my age, if I knew where I was. But all I could think was, I saw Jesus. I was with him out on the way to the hospital. The younger paramedic asked, "Sir, can you hear my voice? What happened?" I looked at him and answered with difficulty, "I saw him." The two looked at each other, a little confused, and thought I was delirious, but I knew exactly what had happened. It wasn't a dream, nor imagination, nor confusion of the mind. It was more real than this world. The hospital. After exams, machines beeping, and a bunch of doctors coming and going, a cardiologist came to talk to me. He seemed not to believe what he had seen in the report. "Sir, you had a complete cardiac arrest for longer than someone normally comes back from, especially with lucidity this quick. It's unusual." I just smiled. I knew it wasn't unusual. It was a miracle. It was purpose. When they finally left me alone to rest, my wife sat beside me, held my hand, and said, "Samuel, what happened? I thought I had lost you." I took a deep breath. The words were stuck. It was difficult to explain something so big, so profound, and so different from everything I believed for 65 years. But I needed to speak. "I need to tell you everything." She was a little startled by my tone. I started from the beginning. I told exactly how I saw myself out of my body, how I was conscious, how Jesus' presence took over that place. When I spoke the name Jesus, she looked at me with surprise, because never in all our marriage had she heard me speak that name with reverence. On the contrary, I always avoided it, always changed the subject, always treated it as something distant from our faith. But now my tone was different. She noticed the difference. I told of the light, of the presence, of the touch, of his voice calling me by name. As I spoke, my wife covered her mouth with her hands, eyes full of tears. Not from fear, but from something that seemed like recognition, as if deep down she knew I wouldn't invent something like this. And then I told about the visions, the world asking for peace, the charismatic man, the quick solutions, the global system, the control. I told about the darkness disguised as light, about the deception that would come upon everyone. I spoke everything exactly as I saw it. When I finished, my wife was silent. She took a deep breath and said quietly, "Samuel, are you sure it was him?" I felt such a strong emotion that I was overcome with tears. I said, "I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I know who I saw." That night was long. I couldn't sleep, not because I was scared, but because my spirit was awake. I felt Jesus near, not as before, physically visible, but as a living presence, like someone who touches the heart from the inside out. And as I lay there, looking at the white ceiling of that hospital room, I began to feel something I had never felt before, a deep, almost desperate thirst to know him more. It was as if I'd spent my entire life studying texts about God, but never realized he was so close that I kept thinking about the visions, the charismatic man, the world seduced by promises, the system that seemed perfect. And at the same time, Jesus' words echoed inside me. In the darkest days, my light will shine even brighter. I knew that all of this wasn't just for me. It wasn't an isolated personal experience. It was a message, a warning, a calling. And it was there in that hospital bed that I understood. My life would never be the same again. Nothing I did before could continue the same. I couldn't ignore what I saw. I couldn't return to routine as if nothing had happened. I had seen Jesus. He had told me about the time that was coming. He had sent me back. I needed to tell. And that's exactly what began to happen from the next day. When I woke up, my body seemed tired, but my soul was on fire. The nurse came in, adjusting some equipment, measuring my blood pressure, asking how I was feeling. I replied that I felt different. She smiled with that trained hospital smile, thinking I was referring to the scare from the night before. But it wasn't that. It was something deeper, something that didn't fit into the words that medicine uses. Shortly after, a doctor entered. He was holding a clipboard and had that serious expression doctors make when they're going to give difficult news. But at the same time, he seemed intrigued. "Mr. Baru, what happened to you is improbable. I would say it's impossible. But you're here, lucid, talking, with stable vital signs. We have no explanation." I looked at him and said calmly, "I have one." He frowned, waiting for me to speak, but before I could explain, my wife entered the room. She was holding a book in her hands, not a Jewish text, not the Tanakh, something I would never expect to see in her hands. It was a New Testament. She stood at the door, looking at me, as if entering unknown territory. I knew the weight of that gesture. For two traditional Jews, for a couple who lived their entire lives within the same religious circle, that book carried a long history of rejection, debate, and distance. But now, instead of repulsion, I felt an unexpected recognition. She said, somewhat trembling, "Samuel, I can't explain why, but I felt I needed to bring this." I took a deep breath. It was as if everything was being aligned without my control. She approached slowly, placed the book in my hand, and when my fingers touched the cover, something inside me burned, not with pain, but with profound understanding. I wasn't just receiving a book, I was receiving a key. That I looked at my wife and said, "He called me by my name." She wiped her eyes and sat beside me. There was love, concern, and a spark of faith I had never seen in her. She asked me to tell it again, from the beginning, and I did. I told everything I remembered, every detail of Jesus' presence, every word, every vision of the time that was coming to us. I spoke. I noticed something changing in her countenance. It wasn't fear, it was truth touching the heart. When I finished, she was silent for a while. Then she said with an emotional voice, "Samuel, I believe you." That phrase was like a gentle wind that hit me. It was as if God was confirming that this journey would not be solitary. But what happened next was even more remarkable. In the late afternoon, a young nurse who had attended to me in the ambulance entered the room. He seemed nervous. He closed the door slowly and came to the bedside. "Mr. Baru, can I ask you something?" I said yes. He took a deep breath, like someone who has been carrying a question in their chest for hours. "When you woke up in the ambulance, you said you saw him. Did you mean Jesus?" I confirmed with a nod. He swallowed hard. "I thought I heard wrong, but what did you see?" There in that hospital room, I told my testimony for the first time to someone who wasn't family. He listened with an intensity one had never seen in anyone. As I spoke, tears began to stream down his face. When I finished, he placed his hand on his chest and said, "I've been away from God for many years. This morning, before coming to work, I asked God to show me anything, any sign, because I didn't know what to do with my life anymore. And now you tell me this." He began to cry openly. It was as if the Spirit was there in the room, enveloping everything. My wife was also crying. I felt Jesus' presence there, as if he was whispering to our hearts, "I came for all of you." The nurse on duty passed in the hallway, saw the male nurse crying, and asked if everything was okay. He smiled, wiping his face, and said, "It's more than okay." When he left, my wife looked at me with wide eyes. She said, "Samuel, this isn't just for us. It's much bigger. I knew. I had felt it since the moment I returned to my body. What Jesus showed me about the end times, about the Antichrist, about global deception, that needed to be said. Not with sensationalism, not with fear, not with manipulation, but with truth, with love, with urgency. I stayed 2 more days in hospital, but those 2 days were like a spiritual classroom. His presence surrounded me all the time. I would wake up in the middle of the night, feeling my spirit being warmed. Sometimes I felt as if Jesus was just there nearby, watching, guiding, waiting for me to be ready for what was coming. The doctor came to discharge me and said I needed to rest a lot, avoid stress, and follow up. I listened to everything with respect, but inside I knew that no medical recommendation explained what had really happened. When I left the hospital, I felt I was leaving not just a building, but an old life. It was like crossing a door to something totally new. And this became even more evident when I arrived home. When we got home, everything seemed the same. The furniture in the same place, the familiar silence, the smell of coffee my wife always made in the late afternoon. But at the same time, everything seemed completely different. It was as if I was seeing the world with new eyes. Every detail had meaning. Every object seemed to tell a story. And mainly, I felt that this house that for so many years housed my old beliefs now carried a new presence that my wife opened the door slowly, perhaps expecting me to have some more intense reaction. But I just stood at the entrance for a few seconds, breathing deeply. I wanted to absorb that moment. It was the beginning of a phase I never imagined living. She held my hand and asked, whispering, "Are you okay?" I smiled, a light but deep smile. "I'm different," I replied, "but I'm okay." We entered. She offered me something to eat, but I said I wasn't hungry. And indeed, I wasn't. It was as if my spirit was so full that my body didn't need anything at that moment. I sat in an armchair where I used to study, the same one where I spent hours and hours reading texts, debating traditions, diving into arguments that now I saw were incomplete. Not wrong, but incomplete that I looked at the bookshelf full of books, at the old volumes I valued so much, and felt something strange. Not contempt, not rejection, but understanding. I had sought God my entire life, and He found me, not in the letter, but in living experience. My wife sat on the sofa, observing my every movement. She seemed to fear a little that I had changed too much, too quickly. And indeed I had changed, but not in an unstable way. There was peace within me, a peace so firm it seemed to sustain my thoughts. She then said, "Samuel, do you think this will affect everything?" I knew what she meant. Our community, our friends, my role as rabbi, my image, my history. I sighed and replied, "It will affect everything, yes, but I'm not afraid." She bit her lip, a sign of nervousness, and asked, "And what are we going to do?" I looked at her with tenderness. "We'll walk step by step." Jesus didn't show me everything to leave me lost. He showed me because there's purpose. She was silent, absorbing. I realized she was fighting an internal battle between what she learned her entire life and what she saw happen to me. But there was something beautiful about it. She wasn't resisting, she was trying to understand. After a while, she said, "I want to know more. I want to understand what you experienced. I want to know Him." Those words were like a silent explosion in my heart. I felt such a deep joy that my eyes filled with tears. "I'll tell you everything, and we'll learn together." That night, something unexpected happened. Just before sleeping, while I was in the bedroom preparing, I felt again that sensation, a gentle presence like a wind that doesn't move the curtains but moves the soul. It was as if Jesus was there, silent, observing. I sat on the edge of the bed, closed my eyes, and then I saw, not with physical eyes, but with the Spirit, a quick image. The Earth's globe rotating and shadows growing over some regions. They were like dark stains spreading, but there were also points of light emerging at the same time, like lanterns being lit. And I felt in my heart a clear phrase, as if spoken in my ear. "The darkness advances, but I am already awakening mine." I opened my eyes immediately. It wasn't a long vision, nor detailed like the previous ones. It was like a reminder, a reinforcement of what I already knew. This wasn't about fear, it was about calling. I went to the living room where my wife was almost asleep on the sofa. I touched her shoulder, and she woke up startled. "Samuel, what is it?" I sat beside her and said, still with accelerated breathing, "I felt him here. Just now. He showed me something. I don't know how to explain it right, but I felt we need to be attentive. It's not just for us, it's for many people." She took a deep breath and squeezed my hand. "Then we'll listen, we'll learn, we'll follow." Those words were everything I needed to hear. That night, when I finally lay down, I felt a sweet weight in my chest. The certainty that my life had been completely redesigned. Not by choice, not by curiosity, but by encounter, by revelation, by love. I fell asleep with the absolute certainty that Jesus wasn't finished with me yet. And little did I know that in the following days, even stronger things would happen. Unlikely encounters, confirmations I would never expect, and even direct confrontations with people who didn't accept my change. But I was ready, or at least I thought I was. I died. I saw Jesus, and he sent me back for only one reason, to tell the world that he is alive. And I will do it until my last breath.